So, this is a talk I'm going to give you on a perspective on the future of service design from the perspective of someone working in really not the design industry, but using design to bring change. This talk is about the future of service design. And when I try to describe my job, I tend to use this photo. As a designer, I've been very focused on design research, so using design to better understand problems, to better understand what's going on around us. And I've been mixing ethnography with the practice of foresight or future thinking and trying to understand for the last 15 years what's going on around the world. And more, I think this illustration illustrates pretty well what I'm doing. Most of my interventions can be resumed with the next slide, which means if you hit that sign, you will hit the bridge. I'll be honest with you guys, a lot of people hit the bridge, but I'm very passionate about orientation and guiding. I think a lot of what we do as designer is to be the Sherpa in the team. We carry a lot of things, but we also lead the way and find a path forward. We try to work into guiding of people, businesses, stakeholders. Now, before I start, I have to say I have a talk that is quite critical. I added a lot of chili in my recipe, and I hope it's okay for you. It's very critical, and I think it is very ethical for me to add this chili in the mix due to the sort of time of human history we're in right now. And this is not the only narrative, it is mine. And I would like to share with you how, from a very critical perspective, I look at the question of practicing design in the sort of funky time we're in. Let's go. When I speak to most students, young designers, people I have in my workshops, people I teach, I could resume this in a very almost like a cartoon, in a way that they share a deep sense of discomfort around the issue of impact. Most designers come out of the education space, get into the workforce, and after 2, 3, 5 years, become extremely disappointed with the total lack of impact of the sort of design practice they have. And many students, growingly, this is a growing trend, say the following about society: they're just waiting for the collapse. So it's extremely grim, it's depressing, and it has a lot to do with what you find in the media right now. And it reflects what's going on in society. But we're also trapped in the aesthetic of dystopia. When I ask my student when was the last time they watched a movie, a TV series, a Netflix show, which was about a positive future in which they would like to live, or in which they would like their grandchildren to live, no one can answer me. No one is able to tell me, yes, I know of a story that paints a positive future. So I think in many ways, frustration with the lack of impact and this sort of weird Black Mirror feeling about the future. And this presentation I'm going to give you is a little bit the sort of message and approach I try to provide to people I engage with. Now, in today's world, after all the failed COPs, the ongoing floods and droughts and extreme heat waves that we see around the world right now, migration and extreme social polarity, what does it mean for the practice of design? And when I will talk about the practice of design, I don't want to only talk about the practice of design that is concerned with the surface of problems, with the very symptomatic aspect of problems, but how do we try to unpack a little bit the underlying systems and structures that create these issues? And going even below, so some sort of what other authors also call the dark matter, how do we approach the more sort of paradigmatic aspect of these realities? That's the high level question of this talk. And to answer these questions, I want to go to this very scientific visual. I'm very interested in the way we produce visuals to understand and navigate our challenges. And I think this one is extremely relevant to kickstart this unpacking. We see that we go up and keep going up, and suddenly something must happen. Some scenarios, it's not even in the picture, it happens outside of the frame, and we see a sudden drop. And then we go back to a very different sort of reality. And I want to use this reality to guide me throughout this presentation and unpack it a bit more with you. We see that massively it's about our energy use. It's about the backbone of our civilization, the way we use energy in our buildings, in our transportation, and in our industry. Agriculture plays a role. There's a lot of different aspects. We can take time to dig deeper in this, but we see that the way we use energy is mostly what is affecting us. Basically, when we understand this, we see that we need a different civilizational operating system, basically. And to unpack this question, I would like to go back to what got me into the practice of future thinking. And in French, we call it la prospective, which is the sort of French European branch of strategic foresight. And Gaston Berger is the founder of La Prospective. He's also the father of Maurice Béjart, very famous in Lausanne. And he came up with a few principles that can guide us. I left them in French intentionally. It says, see far, look far, and be wide in your appreciation of the world. Just open up the scope, analyze deep, take risks, and think for humanity. Here, we're in the 60s, it's l'homme, but it's humanity. And I think these will guide us during this unpacking and help you understand how I will now approach these questions. I'll be very honest, I'm a Marxist, not a communist, but a Marxist. And as Marx famously introduced this powerful idea to the world, and the social sciences are critical social sciences are built around this paradigm, is we try to understand the world to better transform it. Okay, that is fundamental in our approach, and it will also guide us. I didn't get where I am today without a long and complicated process of unlearning. I've been raised in a different reality, in a different time. I was born in the 70s. And a lot of what is happening to me and what I would write online on my website or share with my audiences is about my own process of unlearning. And I believe that unlearning is more than ever at the heart of what we're doing when we design for the future. So I go back to this metaphor, I start to isolate it, and I can start to build some sort of critical model around it. And what we see is that in applying the laws of physics to that curve now, if I use carbon as a metaphor, we see that before the curve, we have to slow down, we have to make the shift, and then we enter a new reality. So what I ask to designers, all forms of designers practicing at the style and surface level, the graphic designers, the wayfinding designers, people working more in user experience or product design, some sort of the form and function level, and then moving up in complexity into systems, organizations, and even higher in complexity into ecosystems, politics, society. What does design mean during these three phases? How do you approach the slowdown in your work? How do you approach the shift? And what does this new reality mean for you? There's not only one. Everybody's perspective is welcome. We should gather our imagination potential in this process of creating this new reality. And if we go now a bit more critical, we see that if we continue going up, if we don't do the slowdown, if we fail at slowing down, we can't do the shift. We continue into completely unsustainable exploitation, extraction, all the horrible things our current economic model is doing. And that is very much what we want to avoid. So we're facing this strange time in the practice of design. And I think it's at the heart of many conversations around the world today. And very probably the most important conversation. If we reduce even more the tension here and we try to create even more contrast, we see that basically we have an unsustainable pathway forward towards extinction. We currently have an extinction of life on Earth, which is about between 100 and 1,000 times faster than the extinction of the dinosaurs. So our economic system is like 1,000 meteors or meteorites. And we need to imagine how we can shape, how we can unleash into the world something more regenerative, something about a new civilization. And the best model we have to think about this comes from an economist from Oxford. It's a model called the donut economics from Kate Raworth from Oxford. And basically, what it introduces is the idea of having a strong social foundation, a social boundary beyond which we should not expand our economy and our society so that everyone can have a safe and just space for their life. But it also adds this ecological ceiling in which we must remain. Governance, strategy, innovation, politics for the future is based on this model. We're overshooting and we're bleeding out of this model in all directions towards the outside and towards the inside. And our strategies as designers must help going back inside these boundaries so that we have a more sustainable society. I'll be very honest with you. I think that overshoot curve is called fascism. More and more, we see the rise of right wing politics, ethno nationalist, and violent movements that reject everything about the donut. And it creates this extremely strong tension in the world. It's remember that this year more than half the world's population will vote. We have really big questions and decisions to make. For now, the problem is that this unsustainable curve is generating incredible returns for investors, and we are addicted to it on top as well of our physical normal economy. We have this global speculative casino, which is not helping as well. Complex challenges ahead. The shift, in many ways, is about asking ourselves, what does it mean to be good ancestors? It is our generations, it is us all together here alive on earth, responsibilities, our collective responsibilities to be the good ancestors that our descendants need. If we do not orchestrate this shift, there might not be any descendants, or those who will be after us might have extremely different and challenging experiences. We're not just talking about launching the new iPhone or the next Google. We're talking about something much more meaningful and a lot more important. So it's not something to take lightly, and it's not about some sort of billionaire on stage promising something new and shiny. However, we do have a narrative from Japan, from the Edo times, that helps us escape the sort of idea that all civilizations are meant to eventually collapse. We have an example of a civilization here, the Japanese civilization, entering the Edo time, when they managed to move from a time of endless wars and destructions. They had complete horrible issues with deforestations and water. Their cities were badly managed and overpopulated and had waste from the war everywhere. And within 2 generations, they managed to enter a period of 250 years of peace, a society deeply structured by the arts and their culture. It was at the time, and probably until now, still the most advanced and sustainable civilization or society on the planet. They had no waste. The cities were even more giant. Edo back then, Tokyo, was 1.6 million people. Back then, if I'm correct, the city of Paris is more or less 1 million. So we're really talking high levels of comfort and leisure. And it's really the Japan that is still inspiring us today. Interestingly enough, what researchers, architects, and historians tell us about this time is that there was a governing principle which was called just enough. And in that time, excess was perceived as extremely a sign of bad taste. So I'm asking myself, for the slowdown, what are the business models, the interactions, the symbols, and the value propositions that you are creating right now to help the slowdown? About the shift in your communities, in your work, how are you guiding and helping people envision what that shift will mean for all of us? And I think we can relate to how we reacted to the pandemics. what it meant for the social body, the contradictions we had within the social body. These are not easy things. And for this new reality, how do we help as designers? We are the creative industry. We're supposed to be in the business of imagination. How do we help people just visualize how life could be different on this planet? How could we escape the current rat race about work that we go through? We're too busy surviving in this system and we don't have time to change it. So, how do we find the means to reinvent our collective futures and imagine how we could coexist together? And to put this into practice, I like to say to people fascinated with the space race and telling me that space innovation is the next frontier for humanity, I'll tell them, listen, the only space race that makes sense is the one where we clean up the mess. We've surrounded our planet with garbage. The Anthropocene is not a geological reality, it spans beyond the scale of the Earth. We've completely surrounded ourselves, like the humans of Wall-E, with trash and meaningless junk. Once we've done that, I'm ready to talk about going to Mars. But guys, like I like to say, forget about interstellar monopoly. Let's land, let's go back to Earth. Let's be more realistic. So, about the slowdown, we need to design sustainable business models that are not just big money with some impact, but big impact with some money. We're not going to lose money, it's going to be profitable. But the heart of the issue is the sustainability. We need to engage in conversations when we try to create this tension. We need to reverse the priorities. Just enough, an era of sufficiency. We need to stop promoting our tools. We don't need another five diamond business, I don't know, whatever diamond program you can imagine. We need to promote the outcomes of our methods. All right. And we need to stop individualizing and depoliticizing issues. Sorry. Wellness, yoga retreats, buying bio yogurts is not going to take us to the next level. Consumerism is not the answer to our problems. It is not the people with the least resources who have to change their shopping behaviors to save the planet. It is those owning the production and the capital to produce the things. All right. So we need to engage in these tensions. And a lot of times when we engage with, we all do our part, we consume better, and we point each other, we point fingers at each other, I think we're just benefiting people. I see those questions popping in and they trigger my curiosity. We need to stop thinking about these issues outside of politics. It's not about vibration, light, or no, it is about concrete material problems, and we need to have those political conversations. Now, about the shift, we have to be honest, it is 100% political. Politics is managing our interdependencies. As soon as two people have to decide what to do together in somehow, it's politics. So design is always political. But we need to find ways to protect our institutions. That's what I try to teach my kids. We need to protect our institution during such a time. It is not about collapse, breaking everything, and go back to the woods, living in tents. We need to have public good infrastructures and good functioning services. That is fundamental to our ability to do this transition. We also need to be a lot more critical with the narratives of the old system. I think the old system is extremely powerful and well funded to trick us into misleading us as well. We need to know that we are going to do this shift while we have climate disasters, while we have social tension, and while our infrastructures are under massive stress. So, as service designers, we have to think, okay, I'm not just generating value for shareholders. I'm not trying to solve the actual problem of my users. I have to put things into perspectives and think at different scales to make sure that I'm enabling this sort of change I'm looking for. I saw that one. I would love to take Jordan Peterson in a talk. That would never happen. He had a talk with Slavoj Zizek, which is one of my favorite philosophers, and I think the result of the talk was just a beautiful result. You will enjoy it. About the new reality, this is an open field. The future is a space for creativity and imagination. We tend to confuse the two. Creativity is knowing what to do with your imagination. And imagination is really the ability to bridge the unknown, to bridge the gap between what we know and what we want, and bring forth realities that are completely out of the ordinary. We need to engage in building narratives and conversations about our shared collective preferable futures. I think as designers, that's a lot what we need to do. Create the space for these conversations to happen. Thank you, Daniele, for today. And going back to the donut, we need to think about how, as designers, we can help build strong social foundations, like my infrastructures, my public services, my institutions, and help us remain below this ecological ceiling. Now, let's be very honest. Any system that is established in violence will maintain itself in violence. Ask any people who have endured colonialism. There's no way this shift can happen with the sort of revolutionary myth that we tend to have on the left. I completely disagree with that. I believe that only a pacifist revolution can enable the sort of shift and be able to sustain itself after. I think we need to work extremely hard to depolarize the conversation and make sure that everybody finds something for them in this new reality. If we look at best cases around the world, and I would invite people to study the Nordics are very good. I would say Denmark is probably one of the most trusted society around the world. The trust is fundamental. Transparent institutions are key. I used to do research on the experience of children during COVID for a company here, and it was striking how cities are badly designed for children, how society today just sends them on the black rectangles. They need more green time, less screen time. We need to redesign cities. We need to redesign youth and shared spaces for all generations. We need efficient and resilient infrastructures. You do service design, you think your service is great. How does it work under stress? Look at Dubai Airport 6 weeks ago. That things designers should wrap their minds around. And I'm in big favor of universal and reliable public services. I think they are key at providing what we need to have a good life on this planet. I have no idea how I'm doing this time. I hope I'm good. What is design doing in each of these three phases we've seen? That's a question I want to ask you. And I will help you. I will give you some hints about how I approach it. As designer, our job is to design and facilitate the co-creation journey. Like I say, since I became a parent, I'm not anymore the hero of the story. It's about the others. We're here to serve. And the way we do that, and that's what I do in my courses, in my sustainable and ethical business model courses, we take an industry, we add disasters, we add low carbon budgets, we add universal services, we reinvent it, and we try to tell the story. Today, AI is amazing at helping us doing this. It's a very interesting time to use our imagination and use it augmented and amplified with AI. So examples, what would be slow travel with dirigible? I like balloons, in an airport for balloons, with a three generation family. How do you make that work? What happens with slow travel? What is a low tech and local seasonal festival? How does Christmas look like without the shiny little lights blinking from Alibaba? How does your local Christmas look like when it's not imported from China? It's not made with plastic, and it's all made like the Japanese would do with paper, with locally made sustainable decorations. How would that work? How would a society, how would a village organize itself to create 100% locally made seasonal festival? What is everything needed for a child to have a happy youth as a universal basic service, from the cribs, the diapers, the boots, the shoes? How can we produce universal basic services where, if you want, we have you covered? Let's imagine a society where this is possible. And let's say menstrual management products, fundamental for life on Earth here, in a cosmo-local and universal basic service. How does it work? Cosmo-local means you open your design and you share it, like an open hardware sort of model, and everybody benefits from everybody's innovation. how does this look like? How do you make it attractive? How do you make it inclusive? How do you make it inviting? We need to move away from design challenges that are about products and apps and services that are inside a for-profit brief. And it's a lot about challenging those briefs and finding ways to design new conditions for. Uh, I like to talk about interventions that can allow new conversations to emerge. And it usually starts with collaborative sense making. Usually there's a ton of intelligence in the room. And as designers, we're helping this knowledge and this wisdom to emerge. I would say to designers, design your own briefs. The brief that your client gives you is just a piece of information. It is data about the design channel, and you're going to put it in your knowledge base about your design challenge, but you're going to write your own briefs. You're going to say, in a design language, this is what we believe we should be doing. Start to own more the conversation. In French, we call this a rapport de force. It's hard to translate in English, sort of power relation. I don't really know how to call this, but there is some tension. It can be extremely healthy, just like a good, healthy debate where there's respect, but let's use design to change that relation. And we can change the narrative with imagination. We can reveal the futures that we prefer. And I like to twist quotes. I like to say, be the glitch you wish to see in the world. Someone just said, love the idea. Who will fund this project? Just all your normal customers. Don't worry, just change the conversation. No one will come to say, hey, help me design my business model for a just and sustainable future where we use low tech and low carbon solutions. You actually have to help them make sense of that reality, twist the brief, and invite them using design towards something that they go, ooh, I like that. It's a lot about supply chains, about fair taxes, about open design, repairability, about the purpose of your business models. It's about the governance. I ask my students to tell me about the governance models that are underlying their business models, and then a lot of things changes. How do you provide living wages across the whole supply chain of your business models? And how can you benefit from a larger nature-based solution? Recently, the Swiss innovation company released the Climeworks big machine that sucks the carbon out of the air and then carbon capture, copy, storage, and puts it in the ground. I think 200 bisons in the mountains are the equivalent of 800 of these plants. So there are a lot of non-high-tech solutions that can generate extremely high level of decarbonization. We don't really have to go full high-tech all the time. The kind of shiny tech we are addicted to here, a mobile phone, the kind of technology that we're hooked on when we talk about the future, here is the flip phone, or we're in the iPad sort of era for children. All these technologies were introduced to us in science fiction using storytelling and imagination. None of these were feasible at the time, but they've shaped our collective imagination and they've shaped our current reality. And it is our responsibility as designers to propose something different for tomorrow. And I like to tell my students, you will not find the future on Unsplash. Unsplash is full of the status quo. You need to create your own reality, your own visuals, propose your own futures. And I want to share a little bit of that. Do we unpack this sort of low tech aesthetic of sufficiency? What does it mean? How would it look like? Would I be attracted by these? Let's not call them products. When I do these, I don't want to add a Nike swoosh on them to make it more desirable. I would love these to be a universal basic service. Looking at how this is all made using AI, trying to question the aesthetics of low tech product design. What would be the lowest form of sustainable, recyclable, circular pair of shoe towards the most advanced sort of recyclable monomaterial or easy to dismantle pair of shoe for winter? What does it mean for me? How can I move away from the sort of super competitive shoe that needs to be extremely attractive because it's competing in my mind with another pair of shoe? It wants to be desired. So how can I remove that from the equation and look at these different aesthetic tracks? And here AI is extremely useful to do that. basic experiences around the house, around the home. How can we reinvent them? How can we use AI to rapidly prototype different aesthetics, more about low tech, sustainable tracks? How can we go crazy? I would like this to be my tourism next destination. How can we add a bit more imagination chili in the mix? I have a series of images, Daniele, you can go on now. I will talk over. Oh, that was a bit fast. What would life, collective society look like? What would be a neighborhood in that world if you remove the car? That was a huge challenge. Midjourney 3 couldn't do it. Midjourney 4 couldn't do it. Started to be able to do it with Midjourney 5. Now the 6 can do it better. I told you I love balloons. I would love to travel using these. Germany to Argentina with a balloon in the 30s was 3 days. I imagined future of sustainable food using algae. And here, very important, go beyond the product, show the supply, show the backstage, show the production, show the practices, the culture, what's happening in the kitchens. Imagine different technologies. I imagine technology that could help us listen to mushrooms. Let's reinvent what we imagine technology does for us, not just making us more productive. How can it be more responsive to each other? How can be technology helping us be better gardeners of our planet in our collective world? I'm almost done. Don't worry. How can we just re-envision stuff that makes us feel weird and question what would this jacket be about? What would be a universal basic pharmacy service looking like? What would be a brand of beauty luxury product looking like? What would be the aesthetic of a slower society where we feel safe and where we have time to have a good life? For the road, pour la route, like we say before our friends leave. Usually it's a little drink for the road. I'm going to share a few high level ideas to equip you. If you're going to navigate that shift, you need a compass, and that compass is you. You're not just learning the rules of the new game, but you're also unlearning the old game. And it is your first step in hacking the future. Accept that you need to unlearn a lot of old things. Now, when I speak to people about change and impact, I realize that a lot of people are very limited in their ability to have concrete action. They're very much trapped into wellness and feel good and coping mechanisms that help them cope with the reality. But beyond buying different products, there's not much you can do. So, a first step is to understand that we're dealing with wicked problems and they require a lot of sense making. We need to deconstruct how things have been constructed around us, and that requires courage. Because one of the issues we have today in organizations and in corporations, in businesses, that we do not have the meaningful and collective tools to talk about violence, domination, and the rapport de force that I mentioned, the power relationship. As soon as there's is asymmetry, we're trapped. We don't have the language and the concepts in order to engage with those realities. So, very important that we have the courage to look at things from the perspective of power. And last but not least, there's no shame in being good at the old game to keep food on the table. If you play the game, you have children, you have family, you have a grandmother to take care of. You have no choice. If you want to buy food, you need money. If you need money, you need a job. It's something you can't escape. But once you've started collecting some resources or some privilege, let's be honest, a slice of comfort, then use it. Use your position. I'm probably among the most privileged people on earth. So I will open my big mouth. I will create that rapport de force. I will try to surface what's going on in order to somehow bend reality and shape a different world for those coming after us, because the future won't hack itself. Only creative, imagination based solutions deeply rooted in pacifism can pave the way for sustainable future pathways and helping us achieve enduring change. I believe, as the Japanese have done it before us, we can do it. We can do it with beauty, with elegance, with style, in the spirit of just enough and sufficiency. And I think that once we start to slow down and we start doing that shift, it might be even faster than this, we will have immense gains of comfort, and we'll have better lives, and we can be the ancestors the future needs. Thank you very much. Thank you, Daniele.
As always, Pascal, you do very good things to my brain every time I speak with you. Thanks so much, mate. It's always a pleasure. There is always this. It feels like every time I speak with you, I get an upgrade. It's like going from all the 4 by 3 to 4K in one session. So thanks so much for that, mate. I would love to just use one or two questions from the crowd. I see one, which is the following one. I'd like to share this one from Sarah, who asks, what new types of capabilities do designers need to support co-creation towards more ethical regenerative futures? And how do they develop those, in your opinion? What's missing? So for you to know, we have here a crowd of people who are also young, and therefore I think it's a good audience telling them what could they do, what are skills and practices, mindsets that you would recommend that they explore.
Wow, that's a great question. First, I would say forget about the myth of the hero designer, so smart and solving the problem like a magician. I think we're trapped in the marketing of innovation, the marketing of design, the marketing of revolutionary thinking. I think we have to be very humble. And that humility is rooted in the idea that the people we are we are designing for and designing with, they hold critical and extremely important information about the design challenge, about their realities. And they're probably even more suited than we are at solving these issues. And we are the facilitators of the progress. If you need to make a cook work with an architect, design is extremely valuable and relevant. And that's somehow this position in the process that designers should envision. And we have our little tricks, and we know how to be storytellers. We know how to create things that are appealing, that have harmony, that have a good sense of craftsmanship and design. But I think we're not going to be the generation of Jonathan Hives who will be on a white background unleashing the iPhone 75. I wouldn't care less. I'm completely bored by that neighborhood of design. I find it completely irrelevant today.
We have another question here from Elvies, something like that. Best way to design the futures is to start from scratch, but the reality is we are working on a fragmented, damaged world. Given this, which aspects of society do you think is best place to start?
So
You have
first,
to.
I have 2 hours. Great.
Yes, you have 2 hours, and I'd love to have it all written out without AI, please.
It will be a very personal answer. I grew up without a TV and I'm a bookworm. I love books. I wouldn't live without reading and books. So I would say the most important thing is green time for children. That's fundamental. The damage done to children currently by the TikToks and the Instagrams and the type of people on these platforms is horrendous. That would be for me the number one thing. Often the parents have the same issues. We are all in that economy of the black rectangle, the slot machines, the casino for the brain, whatever you want to call it, the nicotine for the chemical factory of the brain. That really would be my personal and something close to my heart. But we all have our own human sonar sort of ability to engage with the world, and sometimes just have to look outside and be connected to an issue. It's a lot about what you resonate with. It might be insulation of homes. How do we make sure that our grandparents don't die during heat waves? It could be you're very much into preserving cultural elements, local, that you think have these low tech wisdom of our grandparents for the future. There's so much stuff to do. But if you go on your timeline, if you stay on your timeline, the AI will never show you that because the AI wants to continue to drive you up the curve for profit and shopping and stuff like that. Go to bookstores, get books.
Awesome, mate. We have obviously thousands more questions that we could explore. And I think we'll continue the tradition to have you at least once a year for a refresher. I think that will become a tradition of this little community.
Cool.
But for now, I'd love to obviously, I will send you a few of those questions and you can
Yeah.
maybe give me back a few pointers that I can then share back with the people. But for now, I'd love to say once again a big thank you to you. And maybe do you have last encouraging word for these people, for this community? As Kristen previously did, she had a bit of a call to action for the community. What would be your encouraging call to action for this community?
I would say, in a spirit of resistance, pacifist resistance, change the conversation, make it unescapable, unavoidable to talk about what you're trying to talk about, how you envision the future, bring those ideas to the table. You get rejected, people don't react. Okay, cool. Try again. Yeah, and I think the more we find respectful ways to say, hey, that would be a great future for me. I would love to show you how it works and what we can do with this future and how we're not going to lose ourselves along the way. I think that's the way.
Awesome, mate. Hey, thank you so much again. I always love to remind people that this is all volunteer work because I know the work that goes into preparing all that stuff. So thank you a lot for all of that. And yeah, our last round of applause for Pascal. And I'm excited to try out one of your fancy green burgers one of these days. Once you have found the way to produce them with 3D printing. I'm quite excited to get those. Cheers, mate. Thank you so much.
So
Bye bye.
thanks, Daniele.
Cheers. Bye bye.